everyone. Good afternoon, members, officers, and those that are following this afternoon's meeting online.
The methodology has been confirmed to be the same as normal, and that there will be at least one more round of New Homes Bonus. So again, that was the news we were wanting to hear, really. There will also be a funding guarantee for 23-24. So what the government have announced yesterday is that in the core spending power calculations, every council will see at least a 3% increase. Now, our core spending power is around about 7.8 million, so 3% on that would be about 230,000. But I suspect that will come from increased business rate income. I mean, we'll have to see when our actual figures come through next week. But because that funding guarantee includes compensation on Section 31 for business rates, I suspect that's where the large part of our income will come from. Better care funding, there will be more better care funding because the government wants to see more people being able to move out of hospital on time and into care settings, freeing up NHS beds for those who need them. And with regards to the fair funding review, it has been confirmed that that will not happen in this Parliament. So it won't happen until the next Parliament at the earliest. And there is a new income stream around waste services called the Extended Producer Responsibility for Packaging, which is going to be introduced in 2024. We don't know if that will mainly be something for upper tier councils or whether we, as a lower tier council, would receive some income from that. So that's something we're looking to find out some more detail on. But I think, Chairman, those were the main aspects from the policy note and from the briefing today. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's really helpful, getting that information hot off the press. And I think for us, it's helpful that it doesn't seem to be dissimilar to the situation we were expecting. So our planning is bearing fruit in that sense. Coming back to the report in front of you, members, as before, current levels of earmarked and unearmarked reserves are set out in Appendix C, with contributions to those reserves modelled for next year in Appendix A. Initial proposals for the capital programme are set out in Appendix D. The full business cases will be presented to members in January as part of the cycle of budget meetings. In addition, it continues to be our recommendation that the Council remains part of the business rates pool as long as nothing changes in the finance settlement, and the information coming back from Mrs Buckle seems to indicate that is the case. In the unlikely event that it does, permission is sought within this paper for Section 151 officer, the leader and the lead member for resources, to change that position. So, in summary, the committee will be asked to note the present forecast budget gap of £137,296 for 23-24 and the timescales for closing that gap this year and in following years, and also to present their views on the draft proposals and the capital bids. In addition, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee will be asked for their views at their meeting on the 17th of January 2023. Members, are there any questions on the proposals in front of you? Councillor Mott.
Thank you, Chair. It's very loud. Can I ask, please, obviously we've got money from Devon County Council under the Better Care funding. What exactly do we use that for? Because county are the ones effectively that have to deal with the care of people coming out of the hospitals, etc. So I'm just curious as to what money that's going to go to or how we are responsible for administering that. And also I note that the New Homes Bonus funding is going for capital funding. Would that not be better sort of allocated towards affordable housing schemes, bearing in mind that that's what we've declared already as well?
Thank you, Chairman. So yes, with regards to the Better Care funding, that, as you say, Councillor Mott, that is funding which is passported to us from Devon County. The main ways that our environmental health team administer that is through disabled facilities grants. So that is all about enabling residents to be independent in their own home. So it is things like adaptations to their home to enable them to live independently, whether that's a downstairs bathroom, a downstairs bedroom, stair lifts, those sorts of things, to enable somebody to be able to be discharged from hospital and be able to live independently within their own home. So we do the assessments of that. It goes through an occupational health, which is through Devon County, but in terms of the work being done, we administer those disabled facilities grants, and they are means tested, so we do the means testing of that as well. With regards to new homes bonus, I mean, it's very good news that it's been confirmed there will be one more allocation. In terms of the capital bids that are presented there in Appendix D, some of those are around some upgrades that we know we need to do to our communal areas here both at Kilworthy Park, and doing some work around decarbonisation surveys for our council assets. I think the difficulty with our capital programme is we don't have capital resources such as capital receipts that we can pay for these capital bids. So in the past, what we've tended to do is to use some of our new homes bonus funding to fund our revenue budget, but also to use some of it to fund some capital bids, because otherwise it's quite difficult to fund some of those capital bids if we don't use new homes bonus funding. But clearly that's a decision for members around is there a wish to support some of these capital bids. I mean, for example, there's another one there around providing software for robots. So this is about making us more efficient in some of our services, around automating some tasks. And again, we have got the normal community projects which come from the placemaking service area as well. In terms of affordable housing, we have got reserves that are put aside for housing, but also we've got Section 106 money for affordable housing as well. So there are funding streams for housing, the housing service also.
Thank you. So it's an annual question that I ask as to why our new homes bonus doesn't go towards affordable housing as opposed to propping up our budget and the shortfalls within it. Thank you.
Councillor, I think it's a fair question, and I think it is something that we should keep under review. And if we do come forward with a scheme that needs financing, clearly we've got to look at all avenues for providing that finance, and that would definitely be one of the things that would be in the mix. So I think it's a question that we need to keep firmly front and centre and to keep looking at. So appreciate it being raised. Thank you. Any other questions, members? In which case, members, I'd like to make the recommendations. There are 7 of them in total, and I propose to take them in block, and they're found on pages 15 and 16 of the papers. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Members, any debate? Any debate, members? Councillor Wood.
Is that red? Is that all right? Yeah, there I am on the screen. Right, okay. Thanks, Mrs. Buckle, for that. I just wanted to reflect really on the huge complexity that you are dealing with here and the huge changes that are happening, you know, almost daily, certainly weekly, and most certainly monthly at the moment. So, yeah, I can't believe the amount of work that goes into it, and how you sort of manage to weave everything in and have come out with a deficit that is, what was it, 1.6% or something, so of our annual budget, considering where we've come from. So I think yeah, a lot of thanks and gratitude to you for that. Thank you. I know there's not many people that really understand it to that extent. So yeah, brilliant to have you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other debate, members? In which case we will move to a vote. All those in favour of the recommendations?
That's unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, members. Item 8 is the Customer Access Strategy and Contact Centre update, and I'd like to ask Councillor Cheadle, please, to present the report.
Thank you very much, Leader. In introducing this paper, I'd make the following points. The first is that the way in which the Council interacts with its customers is a bit like painting the Forth Road Bridge. You never stop looking at the way that you manage the processes. You never stop trying to improve them. You don't get to a point where you say that's it. It's a continuous process. And so the report in front of you today is not the answer to the problem. It is a progress report on the work far and an indication of the work that's going to be done in the next tranche. The second point is that the access strategy being offered to you to endorse today is called Digital First. And that term can be misconstrued. It's not intended to convey the point that those that don't have access to digital services are somehow second-class citizens. It's exactly the opposite of that. The strategy is to make sure that wherever possible, people access our services digitally, and that in turn frees up staff to deal with those that find that mode of access difficult. So digital first is not to be misconstrued as the only way of talking to the council is via the internet. That's not the case. I'll come on to why that's not the case in a minute. Whilst not explicit in this report, but it's germane to the subject, the advisory group, which met before today, spent a lot of time talking about the reception area at Kilworthy Park. Evidence from the trial undertaken over the last 6 months or so shows that manning the reception on Tuesdays and Thursdays is simply not an efficient way of doing business. To quote the study, if 2 people come into Kilworthy per day to do something which they couldn't have done any other way than coming in, that could be described as a busy day. If you look at the statistics, on average 8 or 9 people come into Kilworthy. 7 of those come in either just to post something because they happen to be passing, or to ask a question which they could have got by ringing up or by going online. Only about 2 actually needed to come into the building to do something. And to keep the reception area manned to the extent that we currently do is simply not an economic way of using staff. So we talked about an alternative approach, and I'd just like to spend a minute just going through what the 3 prongs of that alternative approach are. The first is that the reception area would be open on a Tuesday, because Tuesdays are the day that we use this building more than any other day of the week. The building is in use on Tuesdays, so it makes sense for the reception area to be manned on a Tuesday. And for that fact to be made sort of well known to our residents, so that if they do need to come into the building, and it's not urgent, as it were, that they can schedule their visit to a Tuesday when they'll find someone on reception. The second approach is to introduce an appointment system, just like you might when you go to the dentist or any other area for help. You ring up, you make an appointment to see a specific officer, and the appointment system will make sure that that officer is here or wherever the appointment is set for at the appropriate time with the appropriate information. The expectation is that actually a lot of people that ring up to make an appointment won't actually need one because their concern can be addressed over the phone or over the internet. But if they do need an appointment, they can get an appointment. And that solves the problem of people coming into Kilworthy unannounced to solve a problem when the staff that need to be here to solve that problem aren't here. A wasted journey. The third approach is to cater for those with what you might call special needs. That might be people that are hard of hearing, hard of sight, and certainly not easily mobile in the sense of being able to come into Kilworthy, and also may not be particularly au fait with operating the internet. And for those people, we propose to use the locality service so that they will get a home visit to sort out their particular issues once we know what that issue is. So that suite of interactions of a walk-in on a Tuesday, if that's your preferred way of doing it, a booking of an appointment, so there's a degree of certainty that your problem will be addressed by the right person, and a home visit for those that can't do either of the first two, occurred to us as the advisory group as being a sort of comprehensive approach to customers accessing our services. The only change that will be required to what we're doing now is currently we open on Tuesdays and Thursdays. This proposal would suggest that we open on Tuesdays but introduce the appointment system, which we have already got the wherewithal to introduce, and the home visits, which we are already doing. So we have sort of gone round that problem and we are ready to go, and I would seek the Hub's agreement that we drop the opening on Thursdays and get on with the recommendations that the advisory group have suggested and that I've just been through this afternoon. The final thing is that South Hams are introducing the sort of virtual assistant in their reception area. So you walk into effectively an empty building or a part of the empty building and interface with a video system, which will in turn sort of patch you through to whoever you might need to talk to. In the advisory group, we were uncomfortable with that people walking into an empty building and talking to a remote screen didn't feel to us as if we were giving the sort of personal service that we would like to give. That said, it is going to be trialled in South Hams, and we'll have the benefit of seeing how that system operates after South Hams have been doing it for sort of 6 months or so. So it's an option to introduce that once we understand exactly how it works, how it's gone down and what the technology involved is, and what the back office functions are associated with it. It would be relatively simple to add it to the suite of other things that we've got going on here, should we wish to. Not our preferred modus operandi, but one that's sort of possible if we feel we could add it. The final thing on the staffing of Kilworthy, although it is possible to continue to staff Kilworthy on a Thursday, should the Hub Committee feel they need to do that, it does introduce a range of staffing difficulties. So it's possible, but not simple. In closing, 2 final points. In the report is a summary of the work done and the work that is to be done. And Jim Davis here is on hand to answer any specific detailed questions you might have on any of that. The proposal is to bring another report, another sort of status report, back to the Hub in the summer 2023. That will be able to report on the automated switchboard, the evaluation of the automated switchboard, which is a project which is sort of live at the moment. And also we will have a better handle on how the sort of reception solution for Kilworthy is turning out in practice. And we've earmarked a slot in the Hub Forward plan for that review in June or July 2023. So with that, I'll close. I wasn't going to go through the paper in detail. It's there for everyone to read. I think I've taken out the salient points. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Councillor Cheadle. Councillor Crozier.
Disturbing in this.
Okay, you can.
Well, maybe I'm speaking too close to it. How's that? Well, are there any questions on the paper?
I think we'll have to push on through and do some further trials with the kit in. Okay, point noted. Thank you. Councillor Wood, you've got a question.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Cheadle, for that. I really like that report, and I really like the thought that has gone into it all. And, you know, as I was thinking about it myself, I was thinking, yes, surely some kind of appointment system would be much more appropriate and streamline our services a lot. I just wonder whether you thought about like a bot on the website. You know, when you have when you go onto some websites, a chat box comes up and says, "What can I help you with?" And you just type in whatever, and it'll take you either to the right part of the website or whatever. Maybe that's a question for Jim. Sorry, to see whether that might be a possibility in the future, perhaps.
Yes, we have chatbots both on the website and through Facebook Messenger already. So and they're easy to change. So we're constantly reviewing and refreshing them. So again, if you use them and you notice any glaring inconsistencies, let us know. But they're very easy to change and adapt. And as Christmas hours come on and things like that, we can add the questions in and make changes.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you.
The other thing that might be worth saying is the automated phone system, instead of reading you 20 options that you might need to select, actually asks you to say what your problem is and then does the triaging sort of without you understanding it, as it were, and leads you to the right place. So it's user-friendly.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? In which case, Councillor Cheadle, if I could ask you, sorry, Councillor Crozier.
I I think I share your view, and in fact, if you look at the statistics, with the exception of revenue and benefits, which are long waits because the questions tend to be incredibly complicated and long-winded to answer, the actual sort of response time is significantly less than 5 minutes. Now, we are going to review the KPIs across the suite of council performance, and I think that would be the time to look again at that one.
So the reason why 5 minutes is quite a good value for us at the moment is that that's roughly the average call length plus the wrap time. So it's about how long a course takes from start to the customer service person completely finishing. As those timings change, it does make sense to change that. So for revenues and benefits, we're looking at having a measure that looks at calls answered within 8 minutes, because that's the average call and wrap time for that. Otherwise, as you bring it lower, you're basically measuring how many customer service agents you have available at any one time. So bringing it down doesn't make a huge amount of difference. Most of our calls are answered quite quickly. Once all the lines are busy, then you're into the average call time, and all the calls after that stage take roughly that amount of time. No, the stat we measure is the amount of time it takes for the customer service agent to answer the phone call. So yes, it is picked up within 5 minutes. But yeah, bring it down a lot more. If your average call lengths are longer than that, you're just basically measuring how many agents you've got free at any one time. So.
I think the question you probably are answering is what is the average time that people wait? The standard might be 5 minutes that we're trying to achieve, but what is the practical average time that people do wait before the phone gets answered? Yeah. Have you a little graph on that?
Yeah, I think if we can come back to that and circulate that around to members, that would be helpful.
Page 51, to approve the customer access strategy principles, that's the digital first, and the approach set out in section 3. To endorse in the approach and the actions on improving the access strategy set out in section 4, and note that the actions to improve the contact centre performance are in Appendix A. Can I have a seconder for those, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds, and then Councillor Wood as well, so we're well covered. If we can go to debate now, members, any debate on this issue? Councillor Vachon.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was greatly relieved by Councillor Cheadle's comments about the Digital First Council at the beginning. It was a bit of a worry to me that that might just be the end of it. It was purely digital, but I'm glad for the explanation that he made. This is a well thought out plan, actually, and it's all inclusive, so I'm really happy with that. I think it would be very important that we obviously publicise this in a great way, so people are aware of what we're trying to do here and don't feel fazed by it, which I think a few people might do. As to the bots that you mentioned, Councillor Wood, I'd be a little bit worried if we ended up with an AI system which is like Ask Alexa, and she would automatically give you an answer to everything. But I think it's a good plan. So yeah, well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think it's really important that we pursue this line as a means of making greater efficiencies whilst retaining that ability to answer questions, but also ensuring that no one is left behind and that we can communicate with those that aren't able to operate digitally. So I very much support it. Any other debate, members? In which case we'll move to a vote. All those in favour of the recommendations?
That's unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, members. If we can move on to item 9.
Sorry, can I just say, 2.5 minutes was the average for October for picking up the.
Thank you.
So,
Well done. If we move on to item 9, and this is the cost of living crisis, plans for household support fund allocation. Councillor Leach is online. Councillor Leach, you prepared to
Yes.
introduce this item from your lofty perch, and we're all ears. It's a truly hybrid meeting. Over to you, Councillor Pearce. Sorry, Councillor Leach.
Close. Yes. Apologies for not coming today. Have a couple of family issues I have to be on hand for. Right. In light of the ongoing cost of living crisis, we've received further funding of £121,407 from Devon County Council to provide support to households in West Devon during the winter months. We are particularly keen to help households who may not be able for any other support the government has made available. This includes providing support to households receiving council tax disabled band reduction as of the 1st of December 2022. This will provide support to disabled people who may be facing acute challenges due to the disappropriate impact that rising costs bring for the additional services they need to manage their conditions. We believe that the proposals are an innovative mixture of direct support, plus a simple application process and some longer-term sustainable solutions to help households deal with higher energy costs, such as the provision of slow cookers, cookbooks, which slow cookers has quite a few other organisations actually supplying these, electric blankets and warm clothing, plus sleeping bags. I'd also like to add to the recommendations that that we investigate the possibility of supplying areas as includes areas to this list, as drying clothes, etc., indoors could cause condensation problems, which could exacerbate mould and other problems within properties. The fund is to be spent by the 31st of March 2023. However, officers will make sure they deliver this as fast as possible to help residents over the difficult winter months. If any individual element of the programme is likely to be underspent, consideration will be given to the reallocating the funds to areas with greater demand, and it is crucial that we are flexible in changing needs. Various options were considered before making the recommendations. These are set out in paragraph 4. Whilst these all had merit, they were mainly discounted due to them being complicated to administer. If there's any questions, I think Mrs. Hoskins is on the call or in the room. So, questions, please.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Cheadle.
Yes, thank you. I very much welcome this report. But I've got a question about the third recommendation, which is the one that might provide slow cookers and electric blankets and what have you. And it says there, to households based on need. And I wondered how we were going to assess that. Should this be sort of households that apply for them, or are they households that somehow we know are in need?
It's kind of a combination. We don't want to duplicate work of others where, for example, food banks are distributing slow cookers. So, for example, if somebody did present at a certain place and kind of exhibited need, that would be a possible distribution channel. What we're looking at is things like, for example, people who are in temporary accommodation, possibly, you know, they don't have cooking facilities. It costs an awful lot of money to go out and buy 3 lots of food a day, for example. So it's kind of joining up some of those activities, but we kind of want to be very, very fluid in determining who actually needs help and when in which circumstances, rather than being sort of very prescribed about it. It's kind of going to be a combination of the two, I would say, yeah, and happily meet somewhere in the middle.
Thank you. Councillor Vachon.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this refers to page 66, 4.1e. It's regarding the EPC rating, E to G, before payments actually made. I can see obviously that it's a bit contradictory, that statement, because at the top end it says energy payment for properties with an energy performance certificate relating to E and G, where G is the least efficient, through a simple application process. This option was obviously discounted, but then it says lower down, however, officers recommending that applicants to the Household Support Fund can demonstrate they meet the low income criteria will also make a top-up payment if they can also demonstrate the property has an EPC rating of E to G. Now, a lot of households don't actually have EPCs in the band we're talking about here. So is there a method which we actually gauge, or we actually pay for EPCs to be made for those properties, or we give funding to have those EPCs for those particular properties?
Well, I mean, we discounted that option initially because we thought that there would be a lot of people in those properties potentially who didn't need the support. However, we also appreciate that there are some people who are on low incomes who would make applications for the Household Support Fund scheme, who also might be in those properties, and therefore, if they can actually demonstrate that they are in a low property. A low EPC rating, we'd look to give an additional top-up payment in those circumstances, but we're not proposing to support anybody in terms of applying for those certificates, because they don't actually, as I'm sure you all know, they don't actually apply to all properties anyway.
Sorry, Chair. It's not quite what I was asking. I'm probably getting a bit confused there. It's the fact that the households that don't have an EPC rating will have to get one in order to apply for some of this funding. Is that correct? In which case, if they haven't got an EPC, they have to pay for one, and the average price is around about, I think, £35. So they'd actually have to pay that before they can apply for this funding. Am I right or wrong in that?
Let me put my mic back on. Yeah, we're not trying to make things difficult. We're not advocating that people do that. We will still support those people anyway through making a payment if they meet the low income criteria. It's just that if they happen to have a certificate that demonstrates that their property is not energy efficient, we would look to give a top-up payment in those circumstances. I appreciate there probably is an element of unfairness there. I see what you're driving at, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cheadle.
Yeah, if I could just come back on a slightly different point. It says at recommendation 4 that if there is a balance of funding left, then the open application process will click in, which I completely understand. One of the areas which may require funding are things like food banks. And they, of course, are dealing with people in need. And it's often a fairly good way of identifying people in need because they have the need to turn up at food banks. And I just wonder if an application from a food bank would fall into the sort of that catch-all.
Possibly not, because although the guidance, that there is guidance, the guidance isn't wholly prescriptive. That's not really what the government is particularly intending through this scheme. So possibly the linkage would be that yes, we could do that, but it would need to be for a defined purpose rather than I don't know, buying food to distribute, for example. So we could look at that, but we would need to make sure that there was a sort of a clear causal link between the two.
Okay, I mean, I think there might be elsewhere in the council's tucked away resources, other ways of supporting food banks, were this fund not able to, if it becomes sort of difficult, which we may need to look at.
I think there might, Councillor Cheadle, and also the warm hubs that are being established in various places across the borough as well, which we maybe ought to look at too. So definitely. Any other questions, members? In which case, Mr. White, is Councillor Leach able to move the recommendations from his online post, or would you like me to do it? Oh, I do apologise. We have another question. Councillor Mott, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I did think you missed me earlier. I know there's never an easy way to work out who we're going to support with these funds. However, under 3.1, you say that it's for those households in most need, particularly those that may not be eligible for other support. If those households are already getting council tax reduction and council tax disabled band reduction, are they also therefore not qualifying for other schemes and grants from central government that have already been paid out? So therefore, how is this helping those that are not eligible for other support?
Absolutely, yeah. So in terms of recommendation one, this is essentially a cohort of people who won't have received the general support payment from government. There aren't actually very many of them. I think it was about 16, yeah, thank you. In terms of council tax disabled band reduction, the majority of those households are just essentially, just kind of households like any other, and they are unlikely to be supported through. They're probably not. Most of them probably aren't on benefit, and they won't be receiving wider support through other government schemes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to check because it's always the sort of ones that just hover above that threshold that are very often most in need but don't qualify for anything, whereas those just below that threshold,
yeah, and we
get and rightly so. We need to support those that need it, but it's that.
And we think that those two microphone back on. Those two recommendations will, they will predominantly cover those people who aren't receiving other support.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? I understand the recommendations must be moved by someone who's physically present at the meeting, so I'm going to move the recommendations on Councillor Leach's behalf. The recommendations are set out numbered 1 to 4 on page 63, with the addition to recommendation 3 of errors to the list of items that could be funded. So warm clothing, sleeping bags, and errors to households based on need. Could I have a seconder for the recommendations, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Members, we're into debate. Any debate on this issue? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I think this is great. Referring to the question that Councillor Mott asked about, the people who aren't in receipt of other benefits, a lot of those people at the moment, as we know, are key workers and people going on strike and so on and so forth. I'm just really thinking about the way that we can communicate this, and hopefully we can have really good communication strategy to maybe target key workers and make sure that they understand that they can do this, because I think sometimes they're assumed to be okay, and we know at the moment with strikes and the unsettled way of the world that they're often not. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll make sure that we do that. I just wanted to add that we've had some discussions with the county council in terms of doing some communications through schools, because we think we'll kind of, you know, reach a wider group of people through some of those mechanisms. But we'll think about other communication channels to try and get the message out as far and wide as possible. Yep, that's a good idea. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other debate, members? In which case we'll move to a vote. All those in favour of the recommendations?
That's unanimous with the addition. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, members. If we can move to item 10, the housing crisis, changes to financial assistance and enforcement policies. And if I could ask Councillor Ratcliffe to please introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. The recommendation is, it will be found on page 69, and can I call upon Mr. Sexton to perhaps outline the recommendation for me, please?
Thank you. What we're proposing is threefold. Is one, to have a more flexible policy to use the Better Care Fund for the adaptation grants. So that includes stable facility grants, accessible home grants and healthy home grants. What we're proposing to do at the moment is predominantly move bathroom adaptations out of means testing, increase the limits of grants of accessible home grants to 30,000 and healthy home grants to 10,000, basically to reflect increased prices both in material and labour. The second fold is to bring in a civil penalty policy regarding minimum energy standards. So that's when we come across energy performance certificates of GNF. So that, like I say, it gives us that bit more flexibility to take action against landlords. Obviously, we will obviously give warnings as and when required, and obviously then if they don't then adhere to the rules, we'll look for the penalty, and also look at bringing electrical safety standards into the civil penalty scheme. So use our existing civil penalty scheme we have already published to bring in a flexible way of how we can deal with landlords, rather than let's say, so it gives a choice rather than going to prosecution to courts. We can issue a civil penalty when there's non-compliance with electrical standards. That's it in a nutshell.
Thank you. Members, any questions about the paper that's been circulated? Councillor Cheadle.
Whilst I get this paper, I sort of understand where it's coming from and where it's going. I just wondered to myself as I was reading it whether there's a sort of unintended consequence buried in here somewhere, that if landlords are going to be fined for letting properties that don't meet minimum energy standards and the like, might those properties be taken off the market rather than improved, thereby exacerbating the housing crisis?
We're very conscious of a shrinking rental market, both in West Devon and South Hams. How we've always approached it is a very pragmatic enforcement regime. We don't go all guns blazing in there and take landlords to task. What I've done over the last 6 months is build a system with Tamar Energy, who's our local community energy group, to have an advice service to start with, so that landlords are able to sort of come in, talk to us about the issues, give advice. If we're able to, signpost them to grant help, because there are grants available for landlords, and so that we're able to encourage the improvement. There are exemptions available, so we'll make that very clear, so that, like I said, if they fall into one of the 3 or 4 or 5 exemption categories, for example, if the measure is going to cost, or the heating or the energy efficiency is going to cost more than 3,500, then they can get an exemption. It may be listed buildings and stuff like that. So we've got all those things in place, because I'm very conscious that if I go in, or any of my officers go in very hard, we are going to lose rental market. So very much a balance between encourage the sort of maybe the naive landlords out there who probably didn't realise and stuff, which probably should know by now, but we'll certainly give that advice to them. What I'm really after is those real rogue landlords out there and stuff like that. So if we know actually they're bordering on criminality, then we will go in appropriately hard. But for the main, is usually we always give the advice out, always encourage them with a mind that we have a person there, and we want to make sure that it does improve. But also very conscious that putting a balance in that if they are living in a property which is non-compliant, us not taking action because we might lose that rental is probably not a good enough reason.
Yeah, no, I get that. And it's an impossible question to answer because you don't know the facts. But it would be awful if someone lost somewhere to live because the landlord refused to improve the property to the standard that we require him to. I mean, you're facing a rock and a hard place.
Definitely, there will be a risk. I won't deny there will be a risk, and there will be some loss. I won't be able to obviously quantify at this stage how many we'll lose, but it may, like I said, but we will always do our best to encourage if they want to generally rent that property. Obviously, there are now standards, and we'll do our best to encourage and make sure it's signposted, or they can get the relevant exemption.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Cheadle. I think it's also clear that there are risks involved in allowing substandard accommodation to persist in terms of the health of those that are living in those heightened accommodations. So I think what you're saying, Mr. Sexton, is that there's a pragmatic and practical response to this, and much of it is working in partnership with landlords to make sure that they can comply.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? Councillor Vachon.
Yes, thank you. I've just gone down to item 11 on the warm-up grants. And I noticed that 11.13 is stating that works generally include sort of mains gas boiler replacement. I'm thinking as we're in an environmental sensitive place at the moment with carbon reduction, would that be better to say replacement with a more efficient, say, heat pump system instead of replacing with like for like?
We can, where possible, look for, like I said, greener solutions, and we're very much looking at Fabric First. What we're trying to do is to have a widest tools as we can, because in some instances gas might be the right answer. We won't do it. We won't do it on scale or on mass. But sometimes, if the property may not be able to handle a PV because of their orientation, it may have the wrong structure for an air source heat pump. So to repair the boiler, it might be the best help for them at that time. So sometimes it's worth waiting, do the repair today, and wait a few years when the technology sort of moves on and stuff like that, and then you can sort of go back and readdress it. But what we're looking at really for that is the here and the now. It's sort of those healthy home grants, or the top-up grants is there really to help the people who are sort of need the help today.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members? In which case, Councillor Ratcliffe, could I ask you to move the recommendations in the report?
Thank you, Chair. The recommendations are, 1, that the existing 2019-2022 Homes Assistance Policy is updated with the revised Better Care Fund Financial Assistance Policy dated 2022. 2, to approve and implement the Electrical Safety Standards Civil Financial Penalty Policy to allow officers to impose fines where necessary to landlords and improve private rental properties. And 3, to approve and implement the Energy Efficiency Standards Civil (Financial Penalty Policy to allow officers to impose fines where necessary to landlords and improve private rental properties.
Thank you, Councillor. Could I have a seconder, please? Yeah. Councillor Mott, thank you. Members, any debate on this issue? In which case, if we can move to a vote, all those in favour of the recommendations?
That's unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. And that brings our agenda today to a close. So thank you, everybody, for your contributions. Thank you to those that have come in online and watched the proceedings. And I call this meeting to a close. Many thanks.